Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner has been known as the groundhog of Argentina. The reason for this is because when she shows up, there's 6 more weeks of crisis to follow. And evidently, as the president of Argentina, she has failed to do her duties. Indeed, this has been affirmed in an article published by the Brookings Institute, dated just this morning, as it goes on to elaborate that Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, when she hit the national stage, had failed to address the issue that every Argentinian citizen had had on their mind. That is, the current currency depreciation that has been going on. Indeed, this currency crisis has been the worst since 2002. And with the peso ultimately losing its sense of value, many are believing that Argentine President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner has been avoiding this at all costs. Therefore, with the fate of the currency crisis in Argentina hanging in the balance, it is imperative for us to ask ourselves today's question, which is, how can Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner stem her country's currency crisis? And the answer to this question is threefold. First, by rendering a sense of stability as well as brokering peace with Brazil. Secondly, by deregulating any type of nationalized industry that the country may have. And finally, by restabilizing relations with Mercosur. Now first, what we have to take into consideration is current relations with Brazil. An article published by El Paso, dated February of 2014, goes on to elaborate that Dilma Rousseff, the current president of Brazil, has ultimately rendered a polarizing presence and aura with that of Argentina. With cultural divisions ultimately pushing the two even farther apart, it's clear that these two powerful women are never going to see eye to eye, or so many believe. However, in recent times, with an article published by The Economist, dated just last week, going on to elaborate that Dilma Rousseff has lent her arm out in a gesture of hospitality for that of Argentina. And with this, we hope that Argentinian President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner takes it, due to the fact that both of them are working on the ideals of a peso, and ultimately with both working against each other, these two powerful women need to work cohesively. And in this, we would see it in their best interests, due to the fact that when they work against each other, they're hurting each other's economy. And with the downfall of Argentina's peso, we clearly saw Brazil also taking the heat. Therefore, we can clearly see that if Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner wants to stem the currency crisis going on, it is in her best interest to ultimately make ends meet for Ms. Dilma Rousseff. Moreover, what we have to take into consideration is the current crisis coming along with nationalization. An article published by Forbes, dated February 4th, 2014, elaborates that there's a current crisis going on other than the currency crisis in Brazil, or rather in Argentina. That is, the current government has been taking over many private sector industries as well as businesses without compensating the owners. This is completely illegal, and the government just doesn't care. They have been ultimately saying that there's inefficiency when it comes towards private sector industries. They're just not doing the job right. So let the government take over and we'll do the job correctly. However, there's an even bigger problem with this, as an article published by the International Monetary Fund, dated January of 2014, elaborates, the thing is, the government has been doing a worse job than that of the private sector. So, it would be in their best interest to see benefits coming in through a coalition, the private sector and the public sector. The public sector rendering a sense of regulation without being too strict, while the private sector took over the businesses themselves. Therefore, we can clearly see a lack of nationalization seeing a benefit. So it would be in Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner's best interest to stem her currency problem by means of deregulating any type of nationalized business, because it isn't in the best interests of the government, contrary to what she would like you to believe. Now, moreover, what we have to recognize is the current problem going on with Mercosur. Now, Argentina has prided itself on its exports and ability to become one of the strongest trading partners in the world. However, what we can clearly see is a problem developing. As an article published by the Bloomberg Businessweek, dated January of 2014, elaborates, the current problem is that Argentina has been backing off due to its currency crisis. That is, in Mercosur. Mercosur is a trade bloc made up of 5 key countries. And with Argentina stepping out as a dominant factor, we can clearly see a problem developing. Clearly, with Argentina stepping out, this causes a significant amount of instability for investors. Therefore, we can clearly see that it would be in Cristina Fernández de Kirchner's best interest to ultimately work on the ideals of creating a sense of stability for investors. What she has to do is basically state that even in times of crisis, one of the worst we've ever had, we're willing to stay strong to our investors and stay strong to Mercosur. Therefore, with Cristina Fernández de Kirchner staying strong to Mercosur, we will clearly see that there would be a lack of volatility in the currency crisis as it stands, and depreciation would ultimately stagnate. Therefore, when re-examining today's question, how should Cristina Fernández de Kirchner stem her country's currency crisis? The answer to this question is threefold, as previously discussed. First, by means of brokering peace with Brazil. Secondly, by ending any type of public sector industry that will nationalize these private sector businesses. And finally, through means of restabilizing relations with Mercosur. So although the groundhog may have showed itself to pop up for another 6 weeks of crisis, we can clearly see that if Argentinian President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner takes the proper steps, she can avoid 6 more weeks.